wonders of the world, and although they have been studied by scientists and archaeologists for centuries, there is still a lot we don't know about them. Archaeologists have studied the structure, origin, and contents of the pyramids, but there are some discoveries that are not just surprising, but simply terrifying. In today's video, we'll be looking at 15 facts about the Egyptian pyramids that terrify scientists. Number 15. The epic weight of the pyramids. The Great Pyramids are undoubtedly large pieces of construction and definitely weigh a lot, but have you ever wondered how much they actually weigh? The Great Pyramid of Giza alone weighs over 5.9 million tons and covers a volume of 2.5 million cubic meters. The pyramids were built using over 2.3 million blocks, each weighing about 5 to as much as 70 tons. Imagine having to transport these large slabs of rocks in ancient times with no cranes, forklifts, or any type of advanced machinery. The average crane today can lift about 10 to 20 tons at once, and even that would be done very slowly. Now imagine hundreds of thousands of workers having to lift and move these rocks from different parts of Egypt to the sites of the pyramids. Interestingly, not all the stones used in building the pyramids were sourced from Giza. Many of the exotic slabs of granite were brought in from Aswan in southern Egypt, which is over 900 kilometers away, which makes the schematics of transportation absolutely mind-boggling to scientists and engineers. For perspective, moving an average 10-ton rock for a few miles would take hours. Now multiply that by the 2.3 million individual rocks that make up the pyramids, but instead of cranes and machinery, people did the lifting and moving. In addition to moving these stones from the quarry to the pyramid site, they would have then had to proceed in stacking the 203 steep steps that make up the pyramids, in pinpoint accuracy, I might add. Engineers have debated for decades as to the possible techniques and methods applied by the ancient Egyptians, but are still unable to come up with a plausible way as to how the Egyptians did it. Number 14. Impressive cutting tools. At this point, it is no debate that the ancient Egyptians had knowledge or access to advanced tools and technology which they used in building the pyramids, one of which was the cutting tools they used in cutting up the stones for the pyramids. Archaeologists have settled that some of the tools used by the ancients were made of copper, such as pickaxes, granite hammers, chisels, and even dolerite. These tools would have been meticulously fashioned to enable them to cut the stones to the exact dimension needed for the pyramids. The simple fact that this was all done over 4,500 years ago when the rest of the world was still figuring out stone weapons is incredibly impressive and frankly a bit terrifying to say the least. Number 13. The mysterious inner coffer. Archaeologists have discovered thousands of objects inside the pyramids, from sarcophaguses to jewelry and even scrolls of ancient texts. But one discovery that has left archaeologists in doubt is the mysterious coffer in the main chamber of the Great Pyramid. Coffers have been found in various locations of the pyramids before, containing sacred objects and valuable items, and at a first glance, this particular coffer looks no different. It looks just like any granite coffer one would expect to find in a 4,000-year-old pyramid. But on closer inspection, they realized it was anything but regular. This particular coffer is not only bigger than other regular-sized coffers, but is also too big to fit through the narrow passage that leads into the chamber. This has baffled scientists since it was discovered, because it could easily be said the coffer was constructed inside the chamber, but that is impossible. The coffer itself was carved out of a single granite rock, which couldn't have possibly been done inside the chamber since it wouldn't fit through the passage either. Another hypothesis on the coffer's mysterious location is that it could have been lowered from the roof while the pyramid was being built, but then again, there is no evidence of this. Also, the fact that the chamber itself is made out of granite appears to blend with the coffer such that it looks like the entire chamber, the coffer included, was carved out of the same large piece of granite. Number 12. Geometric precision. Archaeologists and engineers have been terrified by the precision of the stone placements of the Great Pyramids, and mathematicians and physicists have equally had their share of astounding shock at some of the dimensions of the pyramids. There are a significant amount of geometric and mathematical values hidden in the designs of the pyramids. For one, if you multiply the dimensions of the pyramid's height by its base, you get 3.1415295, which is the value for pi, the foundation of all mathematics, engineering, and physics. Surprisingly, the value for pi wasn't officially discovered until about 2,000 years after the pyramids were built by a Greek mathematician. Do you think that's a coincidence? Think again. The surface areas of the pyramids divided by the dimensions of its base give the golden number, which also wasn't discovered until thousands of years later and had previously only been found in nature in the spiral arrangements of leaves. The list of precision dimensions goes on, but one of the most significant numbers arises when you draw a circle on both the inner and outer sides of the pyramid and subtract each circumference. This gives you 299,792,458, which happens to be the speed of light and the exact GPS coordinates to the location of the pyramids. Mind-blowing, right? But that's not all. Due to the continental drift and the shift of tectonic plates, the actual location of the pyramids has moved about 45 meters from their original location. So not only did the ancient Egyptians encode the exact geometric location of the pyramids, but they anticipated the exact coordinates it would be 4,500 years later when the coded location would be discovered. If that doesn't terrify you, then nothing will. Number 11. The Pharaoh's Curse. The pyramids might offer a broad look into the scientific and engineering advancements of ancient Egypt, but we're quick to forget that the ancient Egyptians worshipped gods and dealt in curses. One of the most well-known curses is the Pharaoh's Curse, which is meant to punish anyone who disturbs the resting place of the kings and their belongings. The Pharaoh's Curse is believed to not be discerning in its punishment and doesn't differentiate archaeologists from thieves, and will punish all who disturb the king's sarcophagus accordingly. The Pharaoh's Curse is believed to have been carried out in the lives of the archaeologists who disturbed the tomb of King Tutankhamun, who ruled in the 18th dynasty. Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter, who discovered the tomb of King Tut in 1922, made the error of not just disturbing the tomb, but actually opening it. When they discovered the tomb, they found more than just a sarcophagus, but also a curse written in hieroglyphics on a clay tablet, which translates to, "Death will slay with his wings whoever disturbs the Pharaoh's peace." Just 5 months after the end of the tomb, Lord Carnarvon passed away at the age of 56. The official report has the cause of death to be a bacterial infection contracted from within the tomb. But it's weird how bacteria has survived in an airtight tomb for over 3,000 years. But that wasn't all. Over 20 other archaeologists and visitors who initially visited the tomb have all passed from mysterious circumstances. Number 10. The Myth of the Slaves. It has always been a common misconception that the Great Pyramids of Egypt were built by thousands of slaves. Some texts have even gone as far as stating these slaves were whipped and beaten if they didn't work, but detailed studies have shown that the opposite is true. The pyramids were actually built by skilled artisans, paid workers, and farmers. Archaeologists have recently uncovered ruins of purpose-built quarters and villages where thousands of workers lived. These accommodations were well furnished and designed to accommodate the multitudes of workers, which is in stark contrast to if slaves were used to build the pyramids instead. Alongside the ruins were ancient scrolls which included seals and timestamps of how Egyptian officials kept track of the workflow, feeding, and housing situation of the workers. In addition, animal bones were also found in these quarters, which indicated that these workers were fed the best cuts of meat, something which was reserved for highly respected workers and not given to slaves. There were also hundreds and thousands of bread jars, which were more than enough to feed the equally large number of workers needed to build the Great Pyramids. Archaeologists and historians have stated that slaves would never have been treated this well, and that workers were actually comprised of farmers and laborers. It's been revealed that at the time there was massive flooding in most parts of Egypt, and this led to a scarcity of food as most farms were unable to produce food. Some archaeologists have even gone as far as stating that the pyramids were built as a large employment scheme by King Khufu to provide a meaningful source of employment for his people during a time when they could not farm to provide for themselves. Although the job of working the pyramids would have been incredibly strenuous, it would have been either that or starvation. Number 9. The constant temperature. The pyramids of Giza are located in one of the hottest places in Egypt, and scientists will forgive you if you expect the interior of the pyramids to be equally hot, if not hotter, than the surrounding. But that simply isn't the case. One major fact about the pyramids that has left scientists dumbfounded is that these giant structures maintain a near constant temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. The chambers within the pyramids could be likened to be nothing more than pressure pots soaking in the heat from the surrounding desert, but they turn out to be a lot cooler than expected. Archaeologists have discovered prehistoric ventilation systems built into the orifices of the pyramids, which serve as a form of cooling system which keeps the temperature at low levels. This is the first discovered form of ancient air conditioning, and the construction still puzzles scientists even today. The question is, how are they able to construct air ventilation systems which fed through all the major passages and chambers within the pyramids without the entire structure collapsing under the sheer weight of millions of tons of rock? However the ancient Egyptians did it is still a mystery, as these ventilation systems have managed to survive for over 4,000 years and still function just as well, even in the hot summer months. Number 8. Unusual hotspots. Archaeologists have always taken a keen interest in the rock arrangements of the pyramids, but a recent detailed study shows that some of these rocks are not as ordinary as they seem. An international team of researchers used the latest infrared technology on scanning the entire exterior of the pyramids, and although most of the scans came out normal, they noticed some anomalies within certain areas of the pyramids. Mysterious heat spots were detected across certain areas, including a particularly large and unusual hotspot behind one of the rocks on the Khufu pyramid. Under normal circumstances, different materials such as rock and air conduct heat differently, which could explain these hotspots as simply voids and spaces below the surface. These spaces could simply be undiscovered cavities or quite possibly secret passages underneath the surface, and while that might be exciting, it's nothing unusual. But the scans revealed a particularly impressive and unusually large heat spot on the eastern edge of the Khufu pyramid just above the ground level. The researchers have been unable to identify what could be the cause of such an incredible absorption of heat in that particular spot on the pyramids. Just to be certain of what they had detected, the team scanned the entire pyramid for a day as the pyramid heated up under the sun and throughout the night as it cooled down under the covers of night. And even though each block or rock used in building the pyramid is unique, scientists have been able to identify most of these rock materials, none of which should be able to heat up to such a degree. The temperature variation between all the different rock types across the pyramid is always less than 0.5 degrees, but these particular rocks had temperature variations up to 6 degrees hotter than all the rest. Scientists are still at a loss for what could be causing these heat spots. Number 7. The location theory. We've established that the Great Pyramids are more than just marvelous feats of architecture, but engineering as well, and now it appears they hold more significant importance to the geographical placement of the Earth as well. A study of the pyramids back in 1870 by Dr. Joseph Seiss revealed that the Great Pyramid is located at exactly the center of all of Earth's landmass, a striking fact that has puzzled scientists for well over a century. This precise location of pyramids is precarious because it's located at the exact intersection of the longest line of latitude and longest line of longitude, placing it at the center of all the landmass on Earth. This is a seemingly impossible feat when you think about it, and it's understandable why it has terrified scientists even to this day. It has led many to believe that the ancient Egyptians knew the Earth was round back when the rest of the world was still running around in animal skins and hunting with spears. And not just that, they were able to calculate and construct the pyramid to near pinpoint accuracy so that it aligned with lines of latitude and longitude, even though those facts weren't discovered until thousands of years later. According to most researchers, the Great Pyramid is the most accurately aligned structure in the world, facing true north with merely 0.6 of a degree of error. Number 6. The pyramids once glittered as diamonds. In today's world of advanced engineering and construction, it's fairly easy to have a house with polished marble and glittering effects, but how about if it was possible over 4,500 years ago? That question alone had left scientists and archaeologists in awe and frankly fairly terrified. It's been proven that during the time of its construction, the pyramids were not just lined with perfectly smoothened stones and rocks, but also covered in sparkling white casing limestone. This limestone effect would have been the last construction phase of the pyramids, as the effects would be a polished surface that would have been almost impossible to scale on, much less work on. The effect of this peculiar limestone would have been a real sight to behold, as the towering pyramids would have literally sparkled like diamonds under the light of the sun. This would have served as a guiding monument to distant travelers as they could navigate the deserts of Giza using the position of the glittering pyramids as a guide. But over 4 millennia, the effects of erosion, rainfall, and even earthquakes have caused the glittering limestone to be washed away. There has even been evidence that limestone must have been scavenged by builders over the centuries to build smaller houses and statues in Egypt. Number 5. The mysterious mortar formula. One would expect that with the centuries of study carried out on the pyramids, archaeologists and researchers would be able to identify all the materials used in constructing the pyramids. After all, they were sourced from the earth, as far as we know anyways. And while we've been able to identify most of the rocks and stones used in the construction process, there is one thing that remains a mystery to scientists: the mortar used in holding the entire structure together. The mortar is perhaps one of the most important aspects of the entire pyramid structure, as it holds most of the rocks in place, preventing them from sliding and crumbling like a stack of Legos. Scientists have obtained the mortar used on the pyramids, and several studies and analyses have been carried out on it, yet scientists have been unable to reproduce the exact mortar formula that was used. It's been speculated that gypsum mortar was used, but it's been highly debated in the scientific community. This is quite terrifying, and to think over 500,000 tons of this mortar would have been used to hold the huge pyramid structure together. Several analyses in various labs have been carried out all over the world, and none has been successful in reproducing the exact mortar used on the pyramids. It has only been concluded that whatever the mortar formula was, it solidified like concrete and was mainly used to hold the inner parts of pyramids. This is because most of the outer rocks were cut to near perfection, that they set so well that gravity alone has held them in place for thousands of years. Number 4. The failed attempts at destroying the pyramids. Did you know that if certain kings of old had their way, there would be no signs of the Great Pyramids today? Looking at the pyramids today, you would notice slabs of rock are missing or simply cracked to a large extent. Well, these were all a result of failed attempts to destroy the Great Pyramids. Back in the 12th century, the second Ayyubid Sultan of Egypt, Al-Aziz, and his ignorant court decided they would destroy the Great Pyramids. Sparing no expense and dedicating a lot of resources to the cause, the Sultan hired hundreds of workers and charged them to destroy the pyramids piece by piece. For months, the workers tried every technique they knew and could come up with, failing at every attempt to remove major stones and do any real damage to the pyramids. They only succeeded in dislodging some of the small base stones and an even lesser amount of the large stones. According to legend, with each stone that landed on the ground, the earth trembled from the impact, resulting in terrible noises with no real success in their efforts. Seeing no real progress, the Sultan finally abandoned the project, which only resulted in the terrible damage we see today on the north face of the Menkaure Pyramid. Scientists today have revealed that if ever such a project were to be carried out today, a similar outcome would be the case, as cranes would have to work round the clock for years to do any real damage to the pyramids. Others have speculated that, at this point, nothing short of a nuclear bomb would bring down the pyramids. Number 3. The intricate web of tunnels. While the sheer size and enormous nature of the pyramids are what draws tourists to the ancient site, it would interest you to know that there are several underground tunnels that are restricted to tourists. It has always been a point of mystery to scientists and archaeologists how the Egyptians managed to construct these tunnels and underground passages. Most of the stones and rocks in the pyramids are cut and stacked with such accuracy that the space between each rock is about 0.02 inches, meaning not even a razor could fit through. These tunnels hold thousands of ancient artifacts and jewels left over from the era of the pharaohs over 4,000 years ago. But sadly, these tunnels and the artifacts they contain are under the restricted supervision of the Egyptian government. These artifacts have never been shared with the public and have since been a point of interest for most archaeologists, as examining these objects would give us a fascinating look into the past. Number 2. The 20-ton swivel doors. The pyramids of Egypt hold many mysteries, one of which remains the construction of the swivel doors located on the Khufu pyramid. The pyramid itself is constructed with heavy stones, most of which weigh above 10 tons. But one would expect that any doors or internal structures would be constructed with a less weight. But apparently the ancient Egyptians didn't think so. These enormous swivel doors each weigh about 20 tons, but that's not all. Each door is cut to precise dimensions and specifications, such that it fits perfectly into the passage or wall it was meant to fit in. These doors are also incredibly well balanced, such that each one can simply be opened with one hand. Also, the doors were designed in such a way that they only open from inside. The pyramids are simply impossible to open from the outside. This is believed to have been done to prevent grave robbers from outside the pyramids, but also to provide an escape for workers still inside. Number 1. An engineering mystery. The pyramids have been a subject of debate not just for archaeologists and scientists, but for engineers as well. The Great Pyramids might be a significant site today, but back then they would have been the very pinnacle of man's creation, standing as the tallest man-made structure for over 3,000 years. The sheer technique and engineering know-how needed to pull off such a construction shouldn't have existed back then. For instance, the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which is the largest of the 3 pyramids, consists of over 2.3 million individual rocks, each weighing at least 5 tons. Getting the rocks to the site is one thing, but the techniques used in stacking them up to the top are something entirely different. Studies have shown that each stone was placed with such accuracy that even if one stone was off by a few inches, the entire symmetry of the pyramid would be compromised. So each stone had to be placed perfectly at just the right angle, would have to be done 2.3 million times with the same level of precision. Getting the heavier stones to the top as the construction progressed would be an equally difficult challenge. Archaeologists believe mega ramps were constructed as workers would have had to pull the stones into place as the pyramids got higher and higher. Engineers all over the world who have studied the pyramids state that even with present-day machinery and techniques, it would be incredibly difficult, and almost next to impossible, to replicate the pyramids. To top it all off, the entire pyramid structure